The beautiful white envelope in Marcus's hands was being ripped to shreds right in front of everyone. My heart was beating so fast I thought it might stop. 150 wedding guests were staring at us with their mouths wide open. The elegant ballroom that had been filled with laughter and joy just minutes before was now completely silent. "This is garbage, Eleanor!" Marcus shouted, throwing the pieces of my gift onto the marble floor. His face was red with anger, and his eyes looked mean. "I don't want your stupid money. I want the keys to your mansion. Give them to me right now." I stood there in my blue dress, shaking like a leaf. My daughter Sarah was crying behind him, her beautiful wedding dress now stained with tears. The guests were whispering to each other, pointing at us. I felt so embarrassed and hurt. "Please, Marcus," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's talk about this later. This is Sarah's special day." But Marcus wasn't listening. He stepped closer to me, his voice getting louder. "No, we're doing this right now. You promised me that house, you old woman. Everyone here can be our witnesses." That's when I knew I had to do something. Something big, something that would change everything forever. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. My fingers were shaking, but I managed to dial just one number. The person answered after one ring. "It's time," I whispered into the phone. 20 minutes later, a man in a dark suit walked through the entrance of the ballroom. When people saw him, they couldn't believe their eyes. Comment below, as I'd love to hear your thought, and subscribe to the channel to help us hit that big 5,000 subscriber milestone. We're so close, and every single one counts. It's free for you, but it means everything to this channel. And hey, while you're at it, I've left a video and also a link to a playlist on the final screen that I promise will surprise you. Seriously, don't miss them. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. Now go hit that button and be part of the journey. Let me take you back to the beginning of this story, 6 months before that terrible wedding day. It was a cold winter morning when Sarah first brought Marcus home to meet me. I was so excited because my daughter had been alone for 3 years after her divorce from her first husband, Tom. Tom was a good man, but they just grew apart. They didn't have any children together, which made their split easier, but left Sarah feeling lonely. I remember opening the front door of my big house and seeing this tall, handsome man with dark hair standing next to my beautiful Sarah. She was glowing with happiness, and I hadn't seen her smile like that in years. My heart filled with joy because I just wanted my daughter to be happy. "Mom, this is Marcus," Sarah said, her cheeks pink from the cold air. "The one I've been telling you about." Marcus stepped forward and shook my hand firmly. "Mrs. Thompson, it's such an honor to meet you. Sarah talks about you all the time." His smile was perfect, and his voice was smooth and charming. I invited them inside, and we sat in my living room by the fireplace. My house is quite large. Some people call it a mansion, I suppose. It has 12 rooms, a big garden, and it's worth quite a lot of money. My late husband Robert and I worked very hard to buy this house 40 years ago. Every brick, every window, every flower in the garden holds precious memories. Marcus looked around the house with wide eyes. "Wow, this place is incredible, Mrs. Thompson. You must be very proud of it." "Thank you, dear," I said, pouring tea for everyone. "Robert and I put our whole hearts into this house. It's been our family's home for so many years." During that first visit, Marcus seemed wonderful. He was polite, he complimented my cooking, and he made Sarah laugh. He told me he worked in real estate and understood the value of beautiful homes. He even helped me carry the teacups to the kitchen without being asked. I thought to myself, finally, Sarah has found a good man. Over the next few weeks, Marcus visited often. He would bring flowers, help with small repairs around the house, and always treated me with respect. Sarah seemed happier than ever, and I began to think of him as the son I never had. Robert and I only had Sarah, and I always wondered what it would be like to have more children. One evening in Marcus came to visit me alone. Sarah was working late at her job at the bank, and I was surprised to see him at my door. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by, Mrs. Thompson," he said. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." I let him in, and we sat in the kitchen. He seemed nervous, which I thought was sweet. "I love Sarah very much," he began, looking down at his hands. "I want to ask her to marry me." My heart jumped with excitement. "Oh, Marcus, that's wonderful news." "I was hoping to ask for your blessing," he continued. "Family is so important to Sarah, and your opinion means everything to her." I was so touched that he wanted my approval. "Of course you have my blessing. You make Sarah so happy, and that makes me happy too." Marcus smiled and hugged me. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. You've been like a mother to me. I never had a close relationship with my own mother, so having you in my life means everything." I felt tears in my eyes. This young man seemed to genuinely care about our family, and I was so grateful that Sarah had found someone who valued family bonds. The proposal happened 2 weeks later. Marcus took Sarah to the same restaurant where they had their first date and got down on one knee. Sarah called me immediately afterward, crying happy tears and screaming with joy. I could barely understand what she was saying because she was so excited. "Mom! Mom! He proposed! We're getting married!" she shouted into the phone. I was so happy for her. After all the sadness from her divorce, after all the lonely nights she spent crying on my shoulder, she finally had her fairy tale ending. Or so I thought. The wedding planning began immediately. Sarah wanted everything to be perfect, and honestly, so did I. I offered to help pay for the wedding because I wanted my daughter to have the most beautiful day possible. Marcus seemed grateful for my help, but he also started making comments about money more often. "You're so generous, Mrs. Thompson," he would say. "Sarah is so lucky to have a mother who can afford to give her everything she wants." At first, I thought he was just appreciating my help, but then he started asking questions about my house, my savings, my investments. He would say things like, "This house must be worth a fortune," or, "You're so smart with money, Mrs. Thompson. You must have quite a nest egg saved up." I began to feel a little uncomfortable, but I told myself I was being silly. Maybe he was just curious, or maybe he wanted to make sure he could take good care of Sarah financially. One day in May, about a month before the wedding, Marcus came to visit me while Sarah was at work again. This time, his visit felt different. He seemed more serious, less charming than usual. "Mrs. Thompson, I need to talk to you about something important," he said, as we sat in my living room. "Of course, dear. What's on your mind?" Marcus looked around the room, his eyes stopping at the expensive paintings on the wall. The crystal chandelier, the antique furniture. "You know, Sarah and I have been talking about our future, about where we'll live after we get married." "Oh, that's exciting. Have you found a nice place?" "Well, that's what I want to discuss with you," he said, leaning forward in his chair. "This house is so big and you're all alone here. It seems like a waste, doesn't it?" I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" "I mean you don't really need all this space, and Sarah and I could really use a nice place to start our marriage. We were thinking maybe we could all live here together." "Like one big happy family?" I was quiet for a moment, trying to understand what he was really asking. "You want to move in with me?" "Not exactly," Marcus said, and his smile didn't look as warm as it used to. "We were thinking more like you could move somewhere smaller, and Sarah and I could take over the house. You know, keep it in the family." My heart started beating faster. This was my home, the place where Robert and I built our life together, where Sarah grew up, where all my memories lived. The thought of giving it up made me feel sick. "Oh, Marcus," I said carefully, This house means so much to me. I'm not ready to leave it." His face changed then. For just a second I saw something cold in his eyes, but then he smiled again and patted my hand. "Of course, Mrs. Thompson, I understand. It was just an idea. We'll figure something else out." But I could tell he wasn't happy with my answer. And that was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Marcus brought up the house more and more often. He would make jokes about how I didn't need such a big place, or he would mention how expensive it must be to maintain. Sarah started joining these conversations too, which broke my heart. "Mom, Marcus has a point," she said one day while we were shopping for wedding decorations. "The house is pretty big for just one person, and the taxes must be huge." "Sarah, honey, that house is my home. Your father and I worked so hard for it." "I know, Mom, but Dad's been gone for 5 years now. Maybe it's time for a fresh start." I couldn't believe my daughter was saying this. The house wasn't just a building, it was our family's history, our foundation, our legacy. But I could see that Marcus was influencing her thoughts, and it scared me. 2 weeks before the wedding, Marcus came to see me again. This time, he wasn't pretending to be nice anymore. "Mrs. Thompson, we need to settle this house situation," he said, standing in my living room like he already owned it. "Marcus, I've told you how I feel about this. And I've told you how Sarah and I feel about it," he said, his voice harder than I'd ever heard it. "We're getting married. We need a place to live. This house is perfect for us." "Then you can visit whenever you want," I said, trying to stay calm. "There's plenty of room for everyone." "That's not what we want," Marcus said, and now he wasn't even trying to hide his anger. "We want our own place, and this should be it. This is my home. Marcus." He stepped closer to me, and for the first time I felt afraid of him. "You know what, Eleanor? You're being selfish. Sarah is your only child. Don't you want her to be happy?" "Of course I want her to be happy." "Then give us the house. What are you going to do with it when you die anyway? It's going to be Sarah's eventually, right? Why not just give it to us now so we can enjoy it while we're young?" I was so shocked by his words that I couldn't speak. The way he talked about my death so casually, the way he demanded something that wasn't his to ask for, it made me realize that I had been very wrong about Marcus. "I need you to leave," I said quietly. "Fine," Marcus said, heading toward the door. "But this conversation isn't over, Eleanor. Not by a long shot." After he left, I sat in my living room and cried. How had everything gone so wrong? How had this man who seemed so perfect turned into someone who frightened me? And how could I protect my daughter from making a terrible mistake? I called Sarah that night and tried to talk to her about Marcus's behavior, but she didn't want to hear it. "Mom, you're being dramatic," she said. "Marcus loves me and he loves you too. He's just excited about our future together." "Sarah, he's demanding that I give him my house." "He's not demanding anything, Mom. He's just suggesting that maybe it's time for you to downsize. Lots of people your age do that." I felt so alone. My own daughter was taking his side and I didn't know what to do. I thought about calling off the wedding, about telling Sarah everything I was feeling. But I was afraid she would choose Marcus over me, and I couldn't bear to lose her. So I decided to try a different approach. I would give them a very generous wedding gift, enough money for them to buy their own beautiful house. Maybe that would satisfy Marcus and show them both how much I loved them. I spent days planning the perfect gift. I put together a check for $50,000, enough for a down payment on a wonderful home. I wrote a letter explaining that I wanted them to have their own fresh start, their own place to build memories. I thought it would solve everything. The morning of the wedding, I felt hopeful again. Sarah looked absolutely beautiful in her white dress. The venue was decorated with white roses and gold ribbons. Everything seemed perfect. I told myself that maybe I had been wrong about Marcus, that the stress of wedding planning had just brought out the worst in him. But when the time came for gift-giving during the reception, when Marcus opened my envelope in front of all those guests, When he saw the check and read my letter, his face turned dark with rage. That's when he started yelling, when he tore up my gift, when he humiliated me in front of everyone I loved. And that's when I knew I had to make the phone call that would change everything forever. The man in the dark suit was walking through the ballroom doors now, and people were starting to whisper and point. Marcus had no idea what was coming for him, but he was about to learn that some battles should never be started. Especially not with someone who had lived as long as I had and learned as much as I had learned. The real story was just beginning. The man in the dark suit walked slowly through the ballroom, and I could see the confusion and shock on everyone's faces. Marcus was still standing over the torn pieces of my gift, breathing heavily from his angry outburst. Sarah was crying harder now, her mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. "Who is that?" I heard someone whisper from the crowd. "I've never seen him before," another guest said quietly. The man was tall and professional looking, probably in his 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes. He carried a leather briefcase and walked with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before. As he got closer to our table, I could see Marcus starting to look nervous. "Excuse me," the man said politely, his voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. "I'm looking for Mrs. Eleanor Thompson." All eyes turned to me. I stood up slowly, my legs still shaking from what had just happened. "That's me," I said. The man smiled warmly and walked over to me. "Mrs. Thompson, my name is David Mitchell. I'm a private investigator. You called my office about 20 minutes ago?" The gasps from the guests were so loud they echoed off the walls. Marcus's face went completely white. Sarah stopped crying and stared at me with wide, confused eyes. "Mom," Sarah whispered, "what's going on?" I looked at my daughter, then at Marcus, then at all the faces staring at us. My heart was still pounding, but now it was from determination, not fear. "Mr. Mitchell," I said clearly so everyone could hear. "Yes, I called you. I believe you have some information for me?" David Mitchell opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Indeed I do, Mrs. Thompson. Should we discuss this privately or—" "No," I said, surprising myself with how strong my voice sounded. "I think everyone here should know what kind of man my daughter just married." Marcus took a step toward me, his face now red with anger again. "Eleanor, what are you doing? This is crazy." "Sit down, Marcus," I said firmly. "You wanted to make a scene in front of all these people. Now you're going to get one." Comment below, as I'd love to hear your thought, and subscribe to the channel to help us hit that big 5,000 subscriber milestone. We're so close, and every single one counts. It's free for you to, but it means everything to this channel. And hey, while you're at it, I've left a video and also a link to a playlist on the final screen that I promise will surprise you. Seriously, don't miss them. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. Now go hit that button and be part of the journey. You might be wondering how I knew to call a private investigator and why I had his number ready in my phone. Well, let me take you back to 3 weeks before the wedding, when something happened that changed everything for me. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was having coffee with my dear friend Martha Rodriguez. Martha has been my neighbor for 15 years, and she's one of those people who always knows what's happening in everyone's life. We meet for coffee every week at the little cafe downtown. "Eleanor, honey," Martha said, stirring sugar into her coffee, "I need to tell you something, and I'm not sure how you're going to take it." My stomach dropped. Martha only used that serious tone when she had bad news. "What is it, Martha?" She looked around the cafe to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer to me. "It's about Marcus." "What about him?" I asked, though part of me already knew I didn't want to hear the answer. "Well, you know my cousin Rosa works at the bank downtown, right? The same bank where Sarah works?" I nodded. Rosa was a sweet woman who had helped me with my banking for years. Rosa came to visit me yesterday, and she was very upset, Martha continued. She said she overheard Marcus talking to someone on the phone in the bank parking lot last week. Okay, I said slowly. Martha took a deep breath. Eleanor, Rosa said Marcus was telling whoever he was talking to that he was going to be very rich soon. He said, and I quote, "The old lady has more money than she knows what to do with, and after I marry her daughter, it's all going to be mine." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Are you sure Rosa heard him correctly? She was sure, Eleanor, and there's more. Martha reached across the table and took my hand. Rosa said Marcus also mentioned your house specifically. He said he was going to convince you to sign it over to him and Sarah, and if you didn't, he had other ways to get it. The coffee in my mouth suddenly tasted bitter. Other ways? What did he mean by that? Rosa didn't know, but Eleanor, it didn't sound good. I sat back in my chair, trying to process what Martha was telling me. Everything started making sense. Marcus's questions about my money, his comments about the house, his insistence that I should move somewhere smaller. There's something else, Martha said quietly. Rosa also said that Marcus has been asking Sarah lots of questions about your will, about your savings accounts, about your investments. Sarah thought he was just interested in taking care of you when you get older, but now it sounds like he's planning something, I finished. Martha nodded sadly. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. I know how excited you've been about this wedding. I felt tears starting to form in my eyes, but I blinked them away. I wasn't going to cry in the middle of the cafe. Thank you for telling me, Martha. I know this wasn't easy. What are you going to do? She asked. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I'm going to find out the truth about Marcus. All of it. After leaving the cafe, I drove straight to downtown and found the office of Mitchell Investigations. I had seen their advertisement in the local newspaper a few months earlier when I was thinking about having someone check on the contractors working on my neighbor's house. David Mitchell's office was small but professional. There were certificates on the walls and a bookshelf full of legal books. David himself was exactly what I expected a private investigator to look like: serious, smart, and trustworthy. Mrs. Thompson, he said after I explained why I was there, I understand your concerns, but investigating your future son-in-law is a big step. Are you sure you want to know what I might find? I thought about Sarah, about how happy she seemed, about how much she was looking forward to her wedding day. Then I thought about what Martha had told me, about Marcus's phone conversation about his other ways of getting my house. I need to know the truth, I said. My daughter's happiness might depend on it. David nodded and pulled out a yellow legal pad. Tell me everything you know about Marcus, and I'll see what I can find out. I spent the next hour telling David everything: how Marcus and Sarah met, his job in real estate, his behavior around my house and money, the conversations about me moving somewhere smaller. David took notes and asked questions. Mrs. Thompson, I have to warn you, David said when I was finished. If this man is what you suspect he might be, the information I find could be very upsetting. It might ruin your daughter's wedding, and it might hurt your relationship with her. I thought about that for a long moment. Was I being a paranoid old woman? Was I so afraid of losing my house and my independence that I was imagining things that weren't there? But then I remembered the cold look in Marcus's eyes when I refused to give him my house. I remembered how he talked about my death so casually. I remembered how he had changed from charming to demanding so quickly. Mr. Mitchell, I said, I would rather hurt my daughter's feelings now than watch her get hurt much worse later. All right then, David said, closing his notepad. Give me 2 weeks, and I'll have answers for you. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I tried to act normal around Sarah and Marcus, but it was so hard. Every time Marcus smiled at me, I wondered if it was fake. Every time he complimented my cooking or offered to help around the house, I wondered what he really wanted. Sarah was so busy with wedding preparations that she didn't notice my strange behavior, but Marcus seemed to sense that something had changed. He would look at me suspiciously sometimes, like he was trying to figure out what I was thinking. 1 week before the wedding, David Mitchell called me. "Mrs. Thompson, can you come to my office this afternoon? I have information for you, and I think you'll want to see it in person." My hands were shaking when I hung up the phone. Part of me hoped that David would tell me I had been wrong about Marcus, that he was exactly what he seemed to be. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. David's office felt different that afternoon. The air seemed heavier, more serious. David had several folders on his desk, and his expression was grave. "Mrs. Thompson, please sit down," he said gently. "What I'm about to tell you is going to be very difficult to hear." I sat down and gripped the arms of the chair and "Just tell me, Mr. Mitchell." David opened the first folder. "Marcus Allen Patterson, that's his full name, is not who he says he is." My heart started racing. "What do you mean?" "First, his job. He told you he works in real estate, correct?" "Yes, he said he helps people buy and sell houses." David shook his head. "Marcus has never worked in real estate, Mrs. Thompson. In fact, he's been unemployed for the past 8 months. I felt dizzy. "But how does he pay for things? He took Sarah to expensive restaurants. He bought her a nice engagement ring." "That's where it gets worse," David said, opening another folder. "Marcus has significant gambling debts. He owes money to several casinos, and according to my sources, some of these people are not the kind you want to owe money to." The room felt like it was spinning. "How much money does he owe?" "Over $200,000. I gasped. "200,000? David nodded grimly. "And that's not all. Marcus has been married before, twice actually." "But he told Sarah he had never been married." "His first wife was named Jennifer Collins. They were married for 3 years. She filed for divorce after Marcus tried to forge her name on loan documents to get access to her inheritance from her grandmother." I put my hand over my mouth. This was so much worse than I had imagined. "His second wife was Patricia Williams," David continued. "She was a widow with a nice house and some savings. Marcus convinced her to put his name on her bank accounts and her house deed. 6 months after they got married, Patricia found out that Marcus had emptied her accounts and was planning to sell her house. She filed for divorce, but by then, most of her money was gone." I couldn't speak. I just stared at David, trying to process what he was telling me. "Mrs. Thompson, there's more. Marcus has been researching you extensively. He knows about your house's value, your bank accounts, your investments. He even knows about the life insurance policy your husband left you." "How could he know all that?" I whispered. "He's been using Sarah to get information. She probably doesn't realize it, but every time she mentions something about your finances or your house, Marcus has been taking notes." David pulled out another paper. "According to my investigation, Marcus has already been in contact with a real estate agent about selling your house. He's also been looking into retirement homes in the area, presumably for you." I felt sick to my stomach. "He's been planning this from the beginning." "It appears so, yes. Mrs. Thompson, I have to tell you, based on what happened with his previous wives, and based on his current financial situation, I believe Marcus is dangerous. If he can't get your money and property willingly, he might try other methods." "What kind of other methods?" David looked very serious. "Elder abuse, financial fraud, maybe worse. Men like Marcus don't just give up when their plans don't work out." I sat in silence for several minutes, trying to figure out what to do with this information. My daughter was going to marry this man in 1 week. She loved him, or at least she thought she did. How could I tell her that her future husband was a criminal who was only using her to get to my money? "Mr. Mitchell, what would you do if this was your daughter?" David leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Thompson, I would tell her the truth. All of it. Even if it broke her heart, even if she didn't believe me at first. Because the alternative, letting her marry this man, could destroy her life completely. I knew he was right, but I also knew my daughter. Sarah was stubborn, and she was deeply in love. If I told her about Marcus's past, she would probably think I was making it up because I didn't want her to be happy. What if she doesn't believe me? I asked. Then you'll have to be ready with proof, David said. I can provide you with copies of all the documents, the divorce papers, the police reports, the financial records. But Mrs. Thompson, you need to understand something. If you wait until after they're married, it will be much harder to protect yourself and your assets. I made a decision that day that I wasn't sure was right, but it was the only one I could live with. Instead of telling Sarah about Marcus before the wedding, I would wait and see what happened. Maybe I was wrong about him. Maybe love really had changed him. Maybe he would be satisfied with my generous wedding gift and leave my house alone. But just in case I was right about Marcus, I asked David Mitchell to be ready. I programmed his number into my phone. And we made a plan. If Marcus showed his true colors at the wedding, if he proved that everything David had discovered was true, then David would be there to help me. I'll have all the documentation ready, David promised. And Mrs. Thompson, I'll make sure you're protected, no matter what happens. As I drove home from David's office that day, I felt scared and sad and angry all at the same time. How could someone be so cruel? How could Marcus look at my sweet, loving daughter and see nothing but a way to steal an old woman's life savings? But I also felt something else. A determination I hadn't felt in years. Marcus thought he was dealing with a helpless old lady who would be easy to manipulate and control. He thought he could scare me into giving him everything I had worked my whole life for. He was about to learn that he had made a very big mistake. Now, standing in that ballroom with David Mitchell holding folders full of evidence, watching Marcus's face turn white with fear, I knew that the real confrontation was just beginning. Marcus had humiliated me in front of my family and friends, thinking he had won. But the game wasn't over yet. In fact, it was just getting started. David Mitchell cleared his throat and looked directly at Marcus. Mr. Patterson, I believe you and I need to have a conversation. Marcus's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. I don't know who you are, and I don't know what this crazy old woman told you, but actually, David interrupted calmly, I know exactly who you are, Marcus Allen Patterson, born March 15, 1985, in Phoenix, Arizona. Previously married to Jennifer Collins and Patricia Williams. Currently unemployed and owing approximately $203,000 in gambling debts. The silence in the ballroom was so complete, you could hear a pin drop. Sarah's face had gone completely pale, and she was staring at Marcus like she had never seen him before. That's not true, Marcus shouted, but his voice cracked. This is insane! Eleanor, what have you done? I stood up straighter, feeling stronger than I had in weeks. I did what any mother would do, Marcus. I protected my daughter. Sarah finally found her voice. Mom, what is he talking about? What gambling debts? What other wives? Her voice was small and scared, like a little girl's. David opened his folder and pulled out several documents. Mrs. Sarah Patterson, I'm very sorry to have to tell you this on your wedding day, but the man you just married has been lying to you about everything. No, Sarah whispered, shaking her head. No, that's not true, Marcus. Tell them it's not true. Marcus looked around the room desperately. Some of the wedding guests were starting to pull out their phones, probably to record what was happening. Others were whispering to each other, and a few people had started moving closer to hear better. This is ridiculous, Marcus yelled. You can't just believe some random private investigator. He's probably making all this up. David calmly handed Sarah a document. This is a copy of your husband's divorce decree from Jennifer Collins, dated August 12, 2019. The reason for divorce is listed as financial fraud and identity theft. Sarah took the paper with shaking hands. As she read it, her face got whiter and whiter. "Marcus," she whispered, "is this real?" Marcus tried to grab the paper from her, but David stepped between them. "Mrs. Patterson, I have many more documents if you'd like to see them. Police reports, court records, financial statements showing your husband's debts." "Stop calling her Mrs. Patterson!" Marcus screamed. "And stop showing her those fake documents." "Marcus," I said firmly, "they're not fake, and you know it." Sarah was crying again, but these weren't happy tears anymore. These were tears of shock and betrayal and heartbreak. "How long have you known about this, Mom?" "I hired Mr. Mitchell 3 weeks ago," I admitted, "after I started noticing some things about Marcus that worried me." "What things?" Sarah asked. I looked at Marcus, who was glaring at me with pure hatred in his eyes. His obsession with my house and my money. The way he kept pressuring me to move somewhere smaller. The way he talked about my death like it was something he was looking forward to. "That's a lie," Marcus shouted. "I never said anything like that." But Sarah was starting to remember things too. I could see it in her face. "Marcus," she said slowly, "you did ask me a lot of questions about Mom's finances, about her will, about how much the house was worth." "I was just interested in your family," Marcus protested. "I wanted to understand your background." David pulled out another document. "Mr. Patterson, would you like to explain why you contacted Richardson Real Estate 2 weeks ago to get an appraisal on Mrs. Thompson's property, or why you visited Sunset Manor Retirement Home to ask about their rates and availability?" The gasps from the wedding guests were getting louder. Sarah's best friend Jessica pushed through the crowd and put her arm around Sarah's shoulders. "Honey," Jessica whispered, "maybe we should go somewhere private to talk about this." But Sarah shook her head. "No. If Marcus wanted to make a public scene, then we're going to finish this publicly." She turned to face her new husband, and I was proud of how strong she sounded. "Marcus, I want you to tell everyone here, right now, the truth. How many times have you been married before?" Marcus's face was red and sweaty now. "Sarah, baby, please. Can't we talk about this alone?" "Answer the question, Marcus." Marcus looked around the room at all the faces staring at him. His parents were there, looking embarrassed and confused. Sarah's friends from work were whispering to each other. Even the wedding photographer was still taking pictures. "Fine," Marcus said, his voice hard and angry now that his charm wasn't working anymore. "Yes, I've been married before, twice. But that doesn't mean anything. People get divorced all the time." "What about the fraud charges?" David asked quietly. "Those were misunderstandings," Marcus snapped. "My ex-wives were bitter and vindictive." Sarah was reading through more of the documents now. "Marcus, this police report says you stole $15,000 from Jennifer's grandmother's inheritance. And this one says you forged Patricia's signature on loan documents." "They're lying," Marcus yelled, but everyone could tell he was panicking now. I stepped forward. "Marcus, what about your job? You told us you work in real estate." Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I do work in real estate, sometimes. It's complicated." David shook his head. "Mr. Patterson, you've been unemployed for 8 months. Your last job was at a car dealership, and you were fired for trying to sell cars that didn't belong to you." The crowd was getting restless now. Some people were starting to leave, probably because they felt uncomfortable watching this family drama unfold. But most of them stayed, too shocked to move. Sarah looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "Mom, why didn't you tell me about this before the wedding?" My heart broke for her. "Sweetheart, I tried to warn you about some things, but you didn't want to hear it. And honestly, I hoped I was wrong about Marcus. I hoped that maybe love had changed him." "But you could have stopped this!" Sarah cried. "You could have saved me from this embarrassment." She was right, and I felt terrible about it. But I also knew that if I had told her before the wedding, she probably wouldn't have believed me. She would have thought I was a jealous old woman trying to ruin her happiness. "Sarah," I said gently, "would you have believed me if I had told you 3 weeks ago that Marcus was a con artist?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking about it. Finally, she shook her head. "No, I would have thought you were making it up because you didn't like him." Marcus saw his chance and jumped on it. "She is making it up! Don't you see what's happening here, Sarah? Your mother hired this fake investigator to ruin our wedding because she's jealous that you found someone to love." "I'm not fake, Mr. Patterson," David said calmly, "and I have witnesses who can verify everything in these reports. Would you like me to call Jennifer Collins?" "She's expecting to hear from me." Marcus's face went completely white. "You contacted Jennifer?" "I contacted both of your ex-wives," David said. "They were very interested to hear that you were getting married again. Jennifer wanted me to warn your new wife about what to expect." Sarah looked up from the documents. "What did she say?" David hesitated. "Mrs. Patterson, are you sure you want to hear this in front of everyone?" Sarah looked around the ballroom at all the people staring at us. Her beautiful wedding dress was wrinkled now, and her makeup was smeared from crying. The flowers in her hair were starting to fall out. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, and instead, it had turned into a nightmare. "Yes," she said firmly, "I want everyone to hear this. I want them to know the truth about the man I just married." David opened another folder. "Jennifer Collins told me that Marcus started asking about her family's money during their 2nd week of dating. He wanted to know about her grandmother's inheritance, her parents' house, her savings account. She thought he was just interested in her life." Sarah nodded slowly. "He did the same thing with me. He asked so many questions about Mom's house and her finances." Jennifer also said that Marcus convinced her to add his name to her bank account after they got engaged. He said it was because they were going to be husband and wife, and married couples should share everything. "Oh no," Sarah whispered. "Marcus asked me to do that too, last month. He said it would make wedding planning easier if he could access my account." The crowd was murmuring now. People were starting to understand just how close Sarah had come to losing everything. David continued. "After Marcus emptied Jennifer's account, he tried to convince her to take out a loan using her grandmother's house as collateral. When she refused, he forged her signature on the loan documents. Marcus was backing toward the door now, probably planning to run away. But David had apparently thought of this possibility because 2 security guards appeared at the ballroom entrance, blocking his path. "Mr. Patterson," David said, "I wouldn't recommend leaving right now. The police are on their way, and running would only make things worse for you." "The police?" Sarah gasped. "Mom, you called the police?" I shook my head. "I didn't call them, sweetheart. But Mr. Mitchell is required by law to report certain crimes, and fraud is one of them." Marcus was trapped now, with security guards at the door and a room full of people who knew the truth about him. His charm was completely gone, and I could see the real Marcus, the angry, desperate, dangerous man that David had warned me about. "This is all Eleanor's fault!" Marcus screamed, pointing at me. "That greedy old woman couldn't stand the thought of sharing her precious house. She hired this investigator to destroy my life." "You destroyed your own life, Marcus," I said calmly. "I just made sure you couldn't destroy my daughter's life, too." Sarah was still reading through the documents, and with each page she looked more and more devastated. "Marcus," she said quietly, "did you ever love me at all? Or was this all just about Mom's money?" For a moment, Marcus looked like he might tell the truth. His shoulders sagged, and his face lost some of its angry hardness. But then, he seemed to remember where he was, and who was watching. "Of course I love you, Sarah," he said, trying to sound sincere. "Emma, this is all a big misunderstanding. Those documents are probably fake, and these people are just trying to cause trouble." But Sarah wasn't buying it anymore. "Marcus, if these documents are fake, Then how did this investigator know about things you never told me? How did he know about your gambling debts? How did he know you were unemployed? Marcus opened his mouth to answer, but no words came out. He had been caught, and everyone knew it. David pulled out one more folder, the thickest one yet. Mr. Patterson, would you like to explain these credit card statements showing gambling transactions at 7 different casinos over the past 6 months? Or these letters from debt collectors demanding payment? The room was so quiet that everyone could hear Marcus breathing heavily. Sweat was dripping down his face, and his hands were shaking. Sarah stood up and walked over to where Marcus was standing. For a moment, I thought she might forgive him, might give him another chance. My daughter has always had such a kind heart, and I was afraid her love for him might blind her to the truth. But when Sarah spoke, her voice was strong and clear and full of dignity. "Marcus," she said, "I want you to leave. Right now. Don't come to our apartment. Don't call me. Don't contact me ever again." "Sarah, please," Marcus begged, dropping to his knees in front of her. "I can explain everything. I can change. I love you." Sarah looked down at him with tears in her eyes, but her voice never wavered. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have lied to me about everything. If you loved me, you wouldn't have tried to steal from my mother. If you loved me, you wouldn't have married me just to get your hands on my family's money." Marcus tried to grab her hands, but Sarah stepped away from him. "Security!" she called to the guards at the door. "Please escort my husband out of here." The guards moved forward, but Marcus jumped to his feet and backed away from them. His face was twisted with rage now, and all pretense of being a loving husband was gone. "You're going to regret this, Sarah," he screamed. "And you, Eleanor, you think you've won, but this isn't over. I'll find a way to get what's mine." "Nothing here is yours, Marcus," I said firmly. "It never was, and it never will be." The security guards grabbed Marcus by both arms and started walking him toward the door. But as they reached the entrance, Marcus broke free and turned back to face the room full of wedding guests. "You're all fools," he yelled. "That old woman is sitting on millions of dollars while people like me struggle to survive. She deserves to lose everything." And then he was gone, dragged out of the ballroom, and out of our lives forever. Or so we thought. But Marcus had one more surprise in store for us, and it was going to be the biggest shock of all. The ballroom was eerily quiet after Marcus was dragged away. Sarah stood in the middle of the dance floor in her beautiful white dress, looking lost and broken. The wedding guests didn't know what to do. Some were gathering their purses and coats, others were whispering in small groups, and a few brave souls were trying to comfort Sarah. I walked over to my daughter and put my arms around her. She collapsed against me, sobbing like her heart was breaking. And I suppose it was. "Mom," she cried, "how could I have been so stupid? How could I not see what he really was?" "Oh, sweetheart," I said, stroking her hair. "You weren't stupid. You were in love. Marcus is very good at pretending to be someone he's not. That's how con artists work." David Mitchell approached us carefully. "Mrs. Thompson, Mrs. Patterson, I'm very sorry about how this turned out. I know this wasn't the wedding day you had planned." Sarah looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. "Mr. Mitchell, thank you for telling me the truth. I know it couldn't have been easy." "Actually," David said, "there's something else I need to tell you both. Something I discovered just this morning that I didn't have time to include in my report." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" David glanced around at the remaining wedding guests. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private?" Sarah shook her head. "No. After everything that's happened tonight, I don't want any more secrets." "Tell us here." David opened his briefcase again and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "This morning I received a call from Patricia Williams, Marcus's second ex-wife. She wanted to warn you about something." "What kind of warning?" I asked. "Mrs. Williams said that after their divorce, Marcus became obsessed with getting revenge on her. He stalked her for months, broke into her house twice, and even tried to poison her dog. Sarah gasped. He tried to poison her dog? The dog survived, but Mrs. Williams had to get a restraining order against Marcus. She said he told her that if he couldn't have her money, he would make sure she suffered for taking it away from him. I felt a chill run down my spine. You think he might try to hurt Sarah or me? Mrs. Williams said Marcus told her that elderly people are especially vulnerable, and that there are many ways to make someone's life miserable without getting caught. The remaining wedding guests had stopped their conversations and were listening to every word. I could see the fear on their faces, and I realized that Marcus's threats weren't just aimed at my family. He had scared everyone who witnessed his humiliation tonight. What should we do? Sarah asked. David pulled out his phone. I've already contacted the police about Marcus's outstanding warrants and his threats tonight, but I think you both should consider staying somewhere else for a few days, just to be safe. Before I could answer, my phone started ringing. The number was blocked, but something told me I should answer it. Hello? I said. Eleanor. It was Marcus's voice, but he sounded different now, cold and calculating instead of angry. How did you get this number? I asked, though I already knew he probably got it from Sarah. You think you're so smart, don't you? Marcus said quietly. You think you've won? Sarah could hear his voice and started shaking. David immediately pulled out his own phone and started recording the call. Marcus, leave us alone, I said firmly. It's over. Marcus laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Oh, Eleanor, it's far from over. You humiliated me in front of all those people. You destroyed my marriage. You ruined my life. You ruined your own life with your lies and your greed. Maybe, Marcus said, but now I'm going to ruin yours. You see, I know all about your precious house, Eleanor. I know about the old wiring in the basement. I know about the gas line that runs right under your kitchen. I know about the security system that you never remember to set. My blood ran cold. Are you threatening me? I'm not threatening anyone, Marcus said smoothly. I'm just pointing out how dangerous it can be for an elderly woman to live alone in such a big old house. Accidents happen all the time. David was frantically gesturing to people in the room, and I could see that several guests were calling 911. Marcus, Sarah said, grabbing the phone from me. If you hurt my mother, I swear I'll— You'll what, Sarah? Marcus interrupted. Call the police? Hire another private investigator? Your mother already played all her cards tonight. She has nothing left. She has me, Sarah said fiercely. And she has people who love her. You have nothing. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was even scarier, because it was so calm. We'll see about that. Give my regards to your mother, Sarah. Tell her to enjoy her big house while she still can. The line went dead. The ballroom erupted in chaos. People were talking over each other, making plans, offering help. David was on the phone with the police, giving them Marcus's description and the details of his threats. Sarah was crying again, but now she was also angry. Mom, you're not going home tonight, Sarah said. You're staying with me. But sweetheart, your apartment is so small, and besides, Marcus knows where you live too. Jessica, Sarah's maid of honor, stepped forward. Mrs. Thompson, Sarah, you can both stay at my house. I have a guest room and a security system. My husband Tom is a police officer, and he's already on his way here. David closed his phone and turned to us. The police are sending several cars to search for Marcus, and they're posting a patrol outside both of your homes tonight. But I agree that you should stay somewhere else, at least until they arrest him. I felt so overwhelmed by everything that had happened. Just a few hours ago, I had been watching my daughter dance at her wedding reception, thinking about how beautiful she looked and how happy she seemed. Now we were planning how to hide from her dangerous husband. Mrs. Thompson, said a voice behind me. I turned to see Robert Chen, one of my neighbors who had been invited to the wedding. I couldn't help but overhear what's been happening. I want you to know that several of us neighbors are going to keep an eye on your house tonight. We've already set up a group text to coordinate. I was so touched by his kindness that I started crying. Robert, you don't have to do that. Yes, we do, said another voice. It was Mrs. Garcia from down the street. You've been a good neighbor to all of us for years, Eleanor. Now it's our turn to take care of you. More neighbors came forward, offering to help watch my house, to drive us places, to bring us meals. I realized that while Marcus thought he had isolated us and made us vulnerable, he had actually brought our whole community together. David packed up his files and handed me his business card. Mrs. Thompson, I'm going to stay in close contact with the police about this case. Marcus has outstanding warrants in 2 other states, so they take his threats very seriously. What kind of warrants? Sarah asked. Fraud, stalking, and harassment charges in Arizona and Colorado. It looks like we weren't his first targets. As we prepared to leave the ballroom, I looked around at the beautiful decorations, the untouched wedding cake, the flowers that were already starting to wilt. All of this should have been celebrating Sarah's new beginning, her happiness, her future. Instead, it had become the scene of her worst nightmare. But as I watched our friends and neighbors rallying around us, offering help and support and protection, I realized something important. Marcus thought he could destroy our lives with his threats and his anger. He thought he could make us afraid and helpless. What he didn't understand was that real strength doesn't come from money or houses or possessions. Real strength comes from the people who love you and stand by you when times get hard. We gathered our things and followed Jessica and Tom to their car. As we drove through the city streets, I kept looking in the mirrors to see if anyone was following us. Every shadow seemed threatening. Every car behind us seemed suspicious. Mom, Sarah said softly, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. If I hadn't brought Marcus into our lives— Stop right there, I said firmly. This is not your fault, Sarah. You fell in love with someone who lied to you about everything. That doesn't make you responsible for his actions. But I should have listened to you when you tried to warn me. I took her hand. Sweetheart, you couldn't have known. Marcus fooled a lot of people, not just you. Even I thought he was wonderful at first. Tom, who had been quietly driving, spoke up. Ladies, I've been a police officer for 15 years, and I've dealt with guys like Marcus before. The most important thing right now is to stay safe and let the law handle him. Do you think they'll catch him? Sarah asked. With all those warrants out for him and with the threats he made tonight in front of witnesses, he won't be able to hide for long, Tom said. Guys like him usually make mistakes when they're angry. We arrived at Jessica and Tom's house, a cozy 2-story home with a well-lit front yard and security cameras visible on the corners. Tom did a quick check around the property, while Jessica showed us to the guest room. I've put fresh sheets on the bed, Jessica said. And there are clean towels in the bathroom. Try to get some rest and don't worry about anything else tonight. Sarah hugged her best friend tightly. Jess, I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me, Jessica said. That's what friends are for. As Sarah and I got ready for bed, sharing the guest room like we were having a sleepover, I thought about how much our lives had changed in just one evening. This morning, Sarah had been a bride getting ready for her wedding day. Tonight, she was a woman discovering that her new husband was a criminal who wanted to hurt her family. But as scary as everything was, I also felt something else, relief. The truth was finally out. Marcus's mask had been torn away, and everyone could see him for what he really was. Sarah was safe, even if she was heartbroken, and our community had shown us that we weren't alone. Mom, Sarah said quietly from her side of the bed. Yes, sweetheart? I love you. And I'm sorry I didn't believe you about Marcus. I love you too, Sarah, and there's nothing to be sorry for. But even as we tried to comfort each other, I couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus wasn't done with us yet. His threats had been too specific, too detailed. He knew too much about my house, my routine, my vulnerabilities. And then, at exactly 2:47 in the morning, Jessica's security alarm started blaring, and we knew that Marcus had found us. The security alarm was so loud it felt like it was splitting my head open. Sarah and I both sat up in bed, our hearts pounding. Through the guest room window, I could see bright lights flashing in the front yard. "Stay here!" Tom shouted from somewhere in the house. I could hear him running down the stairs, and then Jessica was at our door in her bathrobe. "Get away from the windows," Jessica said urgently. "Tom's checking the cameras to see what triggered the alarm." Sarah grabbed my hand and pulled me to the corner of the room farthest from the windows. We crouched down behind the bed, listening to Tom's voice as he talked to someone on his police radio. "Unit 47, this is Officer Chen. I have a security breach at my residence. Requesting immediate backup at 1247 Maple Street." The alarm finally stopped, and the sudden silence was almost worse than the noise had been. We could hear Tom moving around downstairs, checking doors and windows. "Tom?" Jessica called down the stairs. "What's happening?" "Someone was in the backyard," Tom called back. "The motion sensor by the back gate was triggered. I'm reviewing the camera footage now." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold on to Sarah. This was exactly what Marcus had threatened. He was going to make our lives miserable, and he was starting tonight. "Mom, we should call Mr. Mitchell," Sarah whispered. Before I could answer, Tom's heavy footsteps came running up the stairs. He appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas, but carrying his service weapon. "I need you both to see this," he said grimly. "The cameras caught everything." We followed Tom downstairs to his home office, where he had several computer monitors showing different camera angles around his property. Tom clicked on one of the screens, and we watched the footage from the backyard camera. At 2:45 a.m., a figure in dark clothes climbed over the back fence. Even in the grainy black and white video, I could tell it was Marcus. He moved carefully through the yard, checking windows and trying door handles. But what made my blood run cold was what he was carrying: a red gas container. "Oh my God," Sarah gasped. "Is that gasoline?" Tom nodded. "He was planning to set the house on fire with you both inside." I felt dizzy and had to sit down. Marcus wasn't just threatening us, he was actually trying to kill us. "What stopped him?" I asked. Tom pointed to another part of the screen. "The motion sensor alarm went off when he got close to the back door. He panicked and dropped the gas can, then ran back toward the fence." We watched as Marcus scrambled over the fence and disappeared into the darkness. The whole thing had taken less than 3 minutes. "The police should be here any moment," Tom said. "But we need to assume that Marcus knows where you are now, and he's not going to give up." Jessica sat down next to me and put her arm around my shoulders. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry. We thought you'd be safe here." "This isn't your fault," I said, though my voice was shaking. "Marcus is more dangerous than any of us realized." Tom's radio crackled, and we heard a voice say, "Unit 47, we have officers surrounding the property. No sign of the suspect, but we found the gas container and some other evidence." "Other evidence?" Sarah asked. "What kind of evidence?" Tom stepped outside to talk to the other police officers, leaving the 3 of us women sitting in his office, staring at the computer screens that showed empty yard views. "Mom," Sarah said quietly, "I think we need to leave town for a while." I had been thinking the same thing, but hearing Sarah say it out loud made it feel real and terrifying. "Where would we go?" "I don't know. Maybe we could stay with Aunt Margaret in California, or rent a cabin somewhere remote." Jessica shook her head. "Running away won't solve this problem. Marcus will just wait for you to come back. and then you'll be in the same danger." Tom came back inside with 2 police officers, a young woman and an older man who looked very serious. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Detective Rodriguez," the older officer said. "I understand you've been receiving threats from Marcus Patterson." I nodded and told him about the phone call at the wedding reception, about Marcus's specific knowledge of my house, about his promises to make me suffer. "We found something else in the backyard," Detective Rodriguez said. "Mr. Patterson left a note attached to the gas container." He handed me a plastic evidence bag containing a piece of paper. Through the plastic, I could read Marcus's handwriting. "This is just the beginning, Eleanor. You can't hide forever." Sarah read it over my shoulder and started crying again. "How did our lives turn into this nightmare?" The younger officer, whose name tag said Officer Kim, spoke up. "We've been tracking Mr. Patterson since he left the wedding reception. He's been driving around the city for hours, probably planning this attack." "Do you have any idea where he might go next?" Tom asked. Detective Rodriguez looked grim. "Based on his pattern with previous victims, Mr. Patterson will likely escalate his attacks until he's caught or until he gets what he wants." "What does he want?" I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. "According to our research, Mr. Patterson becomes obsessed with his targets. He doesn't just want their money, he wants to destroy them completely. It's about power and control for him." Officer Kim added, "We've contacted the FBI because Mr. Patterson has warrants in multiple states. This is now a federal case." I felt a tiny bit of hope. "Does that mean more people are looking for him?" "Yes, ma'am. We have officers watching your house, your daughter's apartment, your workplace, and anywhere else Mr. Patterson might expect to find you. We also have his photo distributed to every hotel and motel in a 50-mile radius." Detective Rodriguez closed his notebook. "But I have to be honest with you, Mrs. Thompson. Until we catch Mr. Patterson, you and your daughter are in serious danger. He's already shown that he's willing to commit arson and attempted murder." Sarah wiped her eyes and stood up straighter. "What do you recommend we do?" "For tonight, stay here with Officer Chen and his wife. Tomorrow we'll move you to a safe house where you can stay until Mr. Patterson is apprehended." A safe house. I never thought I would need protection from someone in my own family, even if that someone was only family by marriage for a few hours. "How long do you think it will take to catch him?" I asked. Detective Rodriguez and Officer Kim exchanged a look. "It's hard to say, ma'am. Could be days, could be weeks. Men like Mr. Patterson are often very good at hiding." After the police officers left, the 4 of us sat in Tom and Jessica's living room, trying to process everything that had happened. It was almost 4 a.m., but none of us felt like sleeping. "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed," Sarah said. "Marcus always wanted to know about your daily routine, Mom. He asked what time you went to bed, when you did your grocery shopping, whether you had a security system." "I thought he was just trying to be helpful," I said. "Like maybe he was thinking about ways to make sure I was safe." Jessica shook her head. "He was actually figuring out when you would be most vulnerable." Tom, who had been quiet for a while, suddenly sat up straighter. "You know what? I think we're looking at this all wrong." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. "We've been acting like victims, like we're helpless, and Marcus has all the power, but that's not true. We have advantages that Marcus doesn't know about." "Like what?" I asked. Tom started counting on his fingers. "We have the support of the entire police department. We have federal agents working on the case. We have a whole community of neighbors watching out for you. And most importantly, we know Marcus's weaknesses." "What weaknesses?" Sarah asked. "He's angry and impulsive. He makes mistakes when he's emotional, and he's so focused on revenge that he's not thinking clearly about consequences." I was starting to see what Tom meant. "You think we can use his anger against him?" "I think Marcus is going to keep escalating until he does something stupid enough to get caught, and when he does, we'll be ready for him." Jessica looked worried. "That sounds dangerous, boy. What if he hurts someone while he's escalating?" That's why we have to be smart about this, Tom said. We can't just hide and hope he goes away. We need to help the police catch him. Detective Rodriguez had left his business card, and Tom called him right then, even though it was almost dawn. Detective Rodriguez? This is Officer Chen. I have an idea about how we might be able to catch Marcus Patterson. I couldn't hear the detective's side of the conversation, but Tom was nodding and taking notes. Yes, sir. I understand the risks, but Mrs. Thompson and her daughter can't live in fear forever. When Tom hung up, he looked at us with a mixture of excitement and concern. Detective Rodriguez wants to meet with us this morning to discuss a plan. He thinks we might be able to set up a situation where Marcus comes to us instead of us running from him. Like a trap? Sarah asked. More like controlled circumstances where we have the advantage instead of him. I thought about this idea. Part of me was terrified at the thought of deliberately putting myself in Marcus's path, but another part of me was tired of being afraid, tired of hiding, tired of letting this cruel man control our lives. What would we have to do? I asked. Tom looked at his notes. Detective Rodriguez didn't want to discuss details over the phone, but he mentioned something about using your house as bait. My house. The same house that Marcus wanted so desperately. The house he was willing to commit murder to get. If we could use his obsession with my property to trap him, maybe we could end this nightmare once and for all. As the sun started to come up outside Jessica's windows, I made a decision that would either save our lives or put us in more danger than ever before. Call Detective Rodriguez back, I said. Tell him we want to hear his plan. Sarah grabbed my hand. Mom, are you sure about this? I looked at my daughter, my beautiful, brave daughter who had been through so much in the past 24 hours. She deserved to have her life back. She deserved to feel safe again. I'm sure, sweetheart. Marcus took away your wedding day, he destroyed your marriage, and he's trying to steal our future. But we're not going to let him win. What I didn't know was that Marcus had one more surprise planned for us, and it was going to test everything we thought we knew about courage, family, and survival. But as I sat there in Jessica's living room, watching the sunrise through the window, I felt something I hadn't felt since this whole nightmare began. Hope. We were going to fight back, and we were going to win. Detective Rodriguez arrived at Jessica's house at 8 a.m. sharp, carrying a large folder and looking like he hadn't slept all night. He spread out maps and photographs on Tom's dining room table while we gathered around with our coffee cups. Here's the situation, Detective Rodriguez began. We've tracked Marcus to a motel about 15 miles from here. He's been using a fake name, but the desk clerk recognized his photo. The problem is, he keeps moving. Every time we get close, he disappears. So, what's your plan? Sarah asked. Detective Rodriguez pointed to a photograph of my house. Marcus is obsessed with your mother's property. We think if we make him believe that Mrs. Thompson is alone and vulnerable in her house, he'll take the risk of coming after her. I felt my stomach tighten. You want to use me as bait. With extensive protection and backup, Detective Rodriguez said quickly. We'll have officers hidden throughout the house and in the surrounding area. You'll never actually be in danger. Tom studied the map. What makes you think Marcus will fall for it? Because he's desperate now. He knows we're looking for him. He's running out of money, and his anger is making him reckless. According to his ex-wives, Marcus always becomes more dangerous when he feels cornered. Sarah shook her head. I don't like this. What if something goes wrong? Detective Rodriguez looked at her seriously. Mrs. Patterson, something is already going wrong. Marcus tried to burn down this house last night with you and your mother inside. He's not going to stop until he's caught, or until he gets what he wants. What exactly would my mother have to do? Sarah asked. Mrs. Thompson would return to her house and resume her normal routine. We'll make sure Marcus finds out that she's there and alone. When he comes after her, we'll be ready. I thought about my beautiful house, about all the memories Robert and I had made there, about how Marcus wanted to take it away from me. The idea of using it to trap him felt right somehow. "How would you make sure Marcus knows I'm there?" I asked. Detective Rodriguez opened his folder and pulled out a sheet of paper. "We've already started. This morning, we placed a story in the local newspaper about your daughter's wedding day tragedy. The article mentions that you've returned home to recover from the shock." He handed me the newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local wedding turns into nightmare when groom's criminal past is revealed." There was even a picture of my house with the caption, "Eleanor Thompson returns to her Maple Street home to recover after learning her new son-in-law is a wanted criminal." "Marcus will definitely see this," Sarah said. "He's probably checking the news to see if they're talking about what happened at the wedding." Officer Kim, who had arrived with Detective Rodriguez, spread out a floor plan of my house. "We've studied the layout, Mrs. Thompson. We know all the entrances and exits, and we've identified the best places to hide our officers." "How many officers?" I asked. 12, plus FBI agents. Marcus won't be able to move anywhere in or around your house without us knowing." Tom leaned over the floor plan. "What about Mrs. Thompson's safety during the operation?" "Mrs. Thompson will be wearing a wire and a GPS tracker. She'll also have a panic button that will bring every officer running if she feels threatened." Detective Rodriguez pulled out another document. "We've also prepared arrest warrants for Marcus in connection with last night's attempted arson. Between that and his outstanding warrants from other states, he's looking at serious prison time." I looked around the table at all these people who were trying to help me and Sarah. Tom and Jessica had opened their home to us. Detective Rodriguez and Officer Kim were working overtime to keep us safe. Even David Mitchell had called that morning to check on us. "When would we do this?" I asked. "Today," Detective Rodriguez said. "The longer we wait, the more likely Marcus is to either leave town or hurt someone else." Sarah grabbed my hand. "Mom, I'm scared." "I'm scared too, sweetheart, but I'm also tired of running. I want our lives back." Detective Rodriguez checked his watch. "If we're going to do this, we need to start setting up within the hour. Mrs. Thompson, are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this?" I thought about everything that had happened since Marcus came into our lives. I thought about how he had lied to my daughter, stolen her happiness, and threatened both of our lives. I thought about how he had tried to burn down a house with innocent people inside. But I also thought about the strength I had found in myself over the past 24 hours. I had hired a private investigator to protect my family. I had stood up to Marcus in front of 150 wedding guests. I had survived his threats and his attempts to hurt us. "Yes," I said firmly, "I'm sure." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Police officers disguised as repair workers, mailmen, and neighbors positioned themselves around my property. FBI agents set up surveillance equipment in the house across the street. Detective Rodriguez tested my wire and panic button multiple times. "Remember," he said, as we did our final check, "your job is just to act normal. Go about your regular routine. If Marcus shows up, stay calm and keep him talking. We'll handle the rest." Sarah hugged me tightly before I went into the house. "I love you, Mom. Please be careful." "I love you too, sweetheart. This will all be over soon." I walked up the front steps to my house, the house that Robert and I had called home for 40 years. It looked exactly the same as always, but knowing that police officers were hidden in my garden and FBI agents were watching from across the street made everything feel different. I went inside and tried to act normal. I made myself lunch, watered my plants, and sat in my living room reading a book. But I couldn't concentrate on anything except listening for sounds that might mean Marcus was coming. At 3:30 p.m., my phone rang. It was a blocked number. "Hello, Eleanor." Marcus's voice was calm, almost friendly. "What do you want, Marcus?" I said, remembering that the police were recording everything. "I saw the newspaper article about you. It must be so hard going through all this alone." "I'm not alone, Marcus. I have Sarah and I have friends who care about me." Marcus laughed. "Really? Then where is everyone? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're all by yourself in that big, empty house." My blood ran cold. Marcus was watching me right now. "I can see you through your living room window, Eleanor. You're sitting in Robert's old chair, reading a book. You look so peaceful, so vulnerable." I forced myself not to look toward the windows. Somewhere outside, 12 police officers were waiting for Marcus to make his move. "What do you want, Marcus?" I asked again. "I want what was always mine," Marcus said, his voice getting harder. "That house, your money, everything you've been hoarding while people like me struggle." "Nothing I have was ever yours, Marcus." "We'll see about that. You know, Eleanor, house fires are very common among elderly people. Faulty wiring, gas leaks, accidents happen all the time. Is that a threat?" "It's a promise. I'm going to take everything you love, just like you took everything from me." The line went dead. I sat very still, my heart pounding. Marcus was out there somewhere, watching me, planning his next move. But I wasn't alone, even though he thought I was. 20 minutes later, I heard a sound at the back door, the gentle scraping of someone trying to pick the lock. I pressed my panic button once to let the police know Marcus was here, then continued sitting in my chair pretending to read. The back door opened quietly. I could hear footsteps moving through my kitchen, slow and careful. Marcus was trying not to make any noise. I heard him stop in the doorway between the kitchen and the living room. When I looked up from my book, he was standing there with a gas can in one hand and a lighter in the other. "Hello, Eleanor," Marcus said with that fake smile I remembered from when we first met. "Surprised to see me?" "Not really," I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "I've been expecting you." Marcus looked confused. "Expecting me?" "You're very predictable, Marcus. You always hurt people when you don't get what you want." Marcus's smile disappeared. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won. I think you're a sad, angry man who destroys everything he touches." Marcus started unscrewing the cap on the gas can. "We'll see how smart you feel when your precious house is burning down around you." "And then what, Marcus? You kill me and take my house? Do you really think you can get away with murder?" "Accidents happen to old people all the time," Marcus said, starting to pour gasoline on my carpet. "Everyone will think you left a candle burning or forgot to turn off the stove." The smell of gasoline filled the room. I wanted to run, but I knew I had to keep Marcus talking until the police were in position. "You know what the saddest part is, Marcus," I said. "If you had really loved Sarah, if you had been honest with her, you could have been part of our family. You could have had everything you wanted through love instead of theft." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Love doesn't pay the bills, Eleanor. Love doesn't get you a mansion and a bank account full of money." "Love gets you something much more valuable than money, Marcus. It gets you a life worth living." Marcus finished pouring the gasoline and pulled out his lighter. "Too bad you'll never get to enjoy your meaningful life." That's when Detective Rodriguez's voice boomed through the house. "Police! Drop your weapon and put your hands in the air!" Marcus spun around as police officers poured into the room from every direction. His face went through shock, rage, and finally defeat, as he realized he had been trapped. "You set me up," he said to me. "You set yourself up, Marcus. I just made sure you got caught." Marcus dropped the lighter and the gas can as 6 police officers surrounded him. Detective Rodriguez read him his rights while Officer Kim put him in handcuffs. "Marcus Allen Patterson, you're under arrest for attempted arson, attempted murder, stalking, harassment, and fraud. You have the right to remain silent." As they led Marcus away, he looked back at me one last time. "This isn't over, Eleanor." "Yes, it is," I said firmly. "It's completely over." After Marcus was gone and the police had finished collecting evidence, Sarah came running into the house and hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "Mom, you were incredible. I can't believe how brave you were." Detective Rodriguez shook my hand. "Mrs. Thompson, your cooperation made this arrest possible. Marcus Patterson is going to prison for a very long time." David Mitchell arrived shortly after, carrying news that made everything even better. "Mrs. Thompson, I thought you should know. The FBI found evidence that Marcus was planning to target other elderly women after he finished with you. By catching him now, you probably saved other people from going through what you went through." That evening, as Sarah and I sat in my living room, after the house had been thoroughly aired out and cleaned, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. "Mom," Sarah said, "I want you to know something. Even though my marriage was a disaster, even though everything went wrong, I learned something important." "What's that, sweetheart?" "I learned that real love means protecting the people you care about, even when it's hard. You protected me by hiring Mr. Mitchell. You protected both of us by agreeing to help catch Marcus. That's what real love looks like." I smiled and took her hand. "And I learned that my daughter is much stronger and braver than I ever knew. You stood up to Marcus when it mattered most. You chose truth over comfort and justice over denial." Over the next few weeks, Marcus was sentenced to 15 years in prison. His ex-wives testified about his pattern of targeting vulnerable women, and the judge made sure he wouldn't be able to hurt anyone else for a very long time. Sarah started therapy to help her heal from the betrayal and trauma. She also started dating again, but this time she asked me to meet her dates early in the relationship. "I trust your judgment now, Mom," she said. As for me, I kept my house, just as I always planned to. But I also made some changes. I updated my security system, joined a neighborhood watch program, and started hosting weekly dinners for friends and neighbors. Most importantly, I learned that age doesn't make you weak or vulnerable. Experience makes you wise and strong. Marcus thought he could take advantage of an elderly woman who lived alone. Instead, he discovered that this elderly woman had raised a brave daughter, built strong friendships, and learned how to fight for what mattered most. Sarah moved back into my house temporarily while she figured out her next steps. Having her there reminded me daily that the most valuable things in life, love, family, trust, and safety, can't be stolen by people like Marcus. They can only be destroyed if we let them, and we didn't let them. 6 months later, Sarah met a wonderful man named James at her therapy group. He was kind, honest, and transparent about his past. More importantly, when I met him, the first thing he said was, "Mrs. Thompson, I hope someday I can earn your trust and your blessing." This time, I knew my daughter had found the real thing. Marcus had tried to destroy our family with his lies and greed. Instead, he had made us stronger, closer, and more grateful for each other than we had ever been before. Sometimes, the worst things that happen to us teach us the most important lessons about love, courage, and what really matters in life. And sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys actually win. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.